Good afternoon, everybody. This is John Ellis and Alex Ricky Gonzalez, and this is the Friday edition of Office Hours, interview edition, but we're doing it on a special date. It is Thursday, no glass in the class. This is a special interview with Gina Fidel. Gina, her tagline on Google Plus says she is online identity, trust, and authenticity. Who are you? She runs Fat Eyes Web Development, founded in 1998 with husband Doug Anderson. I love Gina and everything she has to say about web development, and I am really looking forward to Alex interviewing her, finding out a lot more about who she is, what this holistic web development thing is, and what it all means for the future of websites and people and social signals and all this stuff, because we know it's changing. Alex, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, John. Just to add a little bit more to that, and this is mostly from Gina's About page. She creates visual and cognitive communication in a web container, which we will discuss a little bit because anytime I see the word communication, I get excited. And she handles on-site SEO and gives guidance for content marketing, social media, and blogging. One of her recent blog posts titled SEO Essentials for the Proactive Small Business Owner talked about this thing called holistic SEO, which I hope we talk about a little bit today. And in it, Gina says, telling stories, weaving together parts, and creating something consistently true, that is SEO, which for most of us that knew SEO even, like a year ago, probably wouldn't say it was that. So we'll see what she means by that. Her bragging rights caught my eye. Lives with the world's happiest dog, because I want to challenge you on that one. And she has a Bachelor of Fine Arts with a focus in painting. Also piqued my interest. Is there anything that you want to add to that, Gina, before we get into the actual interview?
You guys just did such a great job introducing me. I'll just mess it up if I try to add to it. So that was great. Thanks.
Well, I am super, super excited to get to interview you. And I'm super excited because this is your first time on air. How are you feeling about that?
I'm pretty nervous. I have to confess I was on air once before, almost a year ago, but I was naive enough to think I could go on and not say anything. So when I was asked to introduce myself, I was completely panicked. So that put me off for almost a year, and here I am again. I'm going to try it over again. So thanks, you guys.
Well, we gave you a little bit more time to prep. So hopefully that made it a little less scary.
Yeah.
And you're not alone in this space, and the fear of being on air is definitely something that we all have, especially if we're having a bad hair day.
Yeah,
I had someone say that to me once. They were like, "What do you do when you have a bad hair day?" I was like, "I don't know. Wear a hat." I don't know.
That's when the ponytail comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Hairdos. Okay, so talking about your Bachelor of Fine Arts, your BFA, how do you go from a BFA with a focus in painting to web development?
That's a really interesting question, and it could be a really long answer, it could be a shorter answer. I spent a number of years, a couple decades actually, pursuing the career of an artist, and I was quite successful. My husband and I were both doing that, and eventually the whole art world just kind of dried up for a little while in the early 90s. There was a huge crash, and half the galleries in New York closed, and things were just in a huge transition with disposable income, and it was just a different time. And we started to do some work with my brother, who is a retired film composer, and that's a whole nother story. But we were doing some creative projects with him, and my husband had been doing some collaborative work, museum installation work, multimedia, and we just kind of transitioned into becoming fascinated with digital and electronic media and doing a lot of things with 3D and video and animation and learning Photoshop and Illustrator and just kind of transitioning our visual craft to electronic. And we just got really interested in the web around 1997, 98 and realized that we were really frustrated because websites that we were seeing were just hideous. And not only were they unattractive and clearly made by people whose emphasis was in programming rather than graphics or visual communication, we just felt like we had something that we could contribute to the industry. And it turned out to be a really cool discovery because, you know, as a young artist starting out, I felt like I had things to say and things I wanted to change the world. You know, I think a lot of artists start out that way, and what you find in the art world is that it's so elitist that you're changing maybe part of one person at a time. And there's the impact, even if you're successful, is just, it's in such a narrow range because it's such an elitist world. What we've discovered doing web development is that we can make a much bigger difference this way by using our discipline and our talent for the web than for making individual artwork. So we're really happy doing this. It's a better place to be. We love the collaboration also. So that was a medium-length answer.
That's really interesting. So you actually found that you could make more of a difference and help more people in web development rather than the fine arts.
Yeah, going into the business world actually gave us a bigger voice. And Doug showed internationally, I mean, he had a really big career. And so his work was exposed very, very widely, but we still feel really strongly that we're in the right place and this is the way to make the biggest impact.
Interesting. So real quick, because your company is called Fat Eyes Web Development. Where did that come from?
I should have known that would be part of this today. Well, when we were artists, we used to have to title all of our paintings because it would be really boring to have paintings that were just called untitled. And we each used to keep lists of potential titles because they're hard to come up with, frankly. And my husband had his list when we decided to start. I'll just call him Doug. That's his name instead of my husband. When we got started, Doug still had one of his old titles, and Fat Eyes just happened to be on there, and we just both clicked in with that immediately. And it was a whole lot better than Lovers Will Contrast Their Emotions at Times of Crisis.com, or I only employ histrionics to test others' reactions.com, etc. So Fat Eyes worked a whole lot better, and we were pretty naive, actually. We didn't even know. It's turned out to be a great name, and people always ask that question, and people tend to remember the name. So kind of lucked into it. And, you know, eye candy, all that stuff. And I love that eyes cannot actually get fat.
Yeah,
There's no such thing, right?
As a woman, I appreciate that too. It's so you know when they ask us that question, like, what's the one part of you that you love? We always say things like our eyes or our hands, or it's because of the one part of us that can't get fat. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of being a woman, you're a woman in a field that would generally be considered male-dominated. Have you found that to offer you a different experience in web development? Have you found that people respond to you differently?
It's a really interesting question. You know, I came up at a time when feminism was just a really huge part of my life, and it was actually what my art was about also. So it was really immersed. And I may be kind of naive, but I haven't really focused on the fact that my industry is male-driven. I tend to focus more on the world being male-driven, and this is just a little tiny fraction of it. But I think that the way my being a woman has primarily affected is because it may have helped us to structure how we wanted to work with clients and what was really important to us in terms of how we make websites and what we talk about and kind of the emphasis that we put towards the development of a website and how we got to being concerned with authenticity and identity and essence and character and personality and all of that kind of stuff. So that I may have been bringing more feminine qualities to the work that we do. And yeah, occasionally I notice when I'm talking to geeks and coders and stuff, it's definitely, there's a lot of boys in the room. And, I've always felt the need to be as articulate as I possibly can. And that may put a little extra pressure because that kind of brain, that I'm working with. But it's an interesting question, and I think now that you've raised it, I'll probably pay more attention, and I may come back to you in a month with some more answers on that.
Uh-oh. I feel like I don't mean to make it a sexist war or anything like
No wars. That's the war.
But, I mean, the interesting thing about when you compare genders, especially when you compare something like communication, which in your About page you talk about using visual and cognitive communication in a web container, we do see a lot in communication that gender does affect the way that we communicate. So I think it's interesting to think about how you communicate with clients, and you have this different perspective than what your male counterparts might bring to the web development table in a sense.
Yeah, because I've always been all about who are you, and what is it you want to be communicating? What do you want to be saying? This is your chance. This website is your chance to let the world know who you are, and that's got to happen within the first, at least some portion of that has got to happen within the first 3 seconds. We've got to seduce the audience. We've got to connect with them emotionally. All that stuff that people tend to pair with a more feminine side. Absolutely, and that's always a tremendous portion of what we work with each of our clients. And of course, functionality, all that stuff's critical, and it's part of the equation, but we're always after that kind of bottom layer.
So when you, and again, I'm doing a little bit of an aside, so I apologize, but when you start with a new client, do you start with functionality, or do you tend to start with who are you, what are you looking for, what is this website supposed to do for you?
There's a weaving of all of the above, and it's different with, we don't work in a formulaic fashion. So each individual or team that we're with is going to contribute to how we're going to work with them, because it's a collaboration. So we're absorbing their energy, we're listening to them, we're paying attention as much as possible to all of the signals that they're giving us through their bodies, their clothes, what they do, what their passions are. That stuff starts to come out right away. You get a sense of the individual or the individuals in a team, and that helps to drive where the conversation balances. But eventually all of those things do need to get discussed. So I'm not sure there's a hierarchical order.
Well said, as another web developer.
Thank you,
It's
Don.
a dance. I would just say it's a dance. And
exactly. Yeah, and it takes a lot of active listening, and some psychology and some education, and often people are surprised at some of the questions that we ask about who are you and what's important to you. I mean, one really good example, we did a website for one of the local hospices a number of years ago, and in our design discovery meeting, we always have a meeting that's dedicated to the design and the functionality. After all the paperwork and the preliminaries are done, that's the first order of business. And we sat around a table with probably 12 people, nurses and social workers and doctors and people who work with dying people. And we asked them each why they loved coming to work each day. And so we got to hear a story from each of them about what was meaningful in the work that they do. And from all of that, we started to develop what the design ought to feel like. So
that's really cool.
It was an amazing day. I love that. It was great.
Yeah. That's awesome. Though, of course, to the other side of it is that you have to have clients that are open to those kind of questions, right?
Yeah, and sometimes they're not. And we're prepared to do all of it for them if they're not. It's if that's not where their interest is and they don't want to pursue that line of thinking, that's fine. We can take it on ourselves without any assistance from our clients all the way. But I feel, one of our goals in the end, especially now with holistic SEO, one of our goals is that our clients love their website when it's done, because we want them to have a really positive relationship with it, or they won't use it, and they won't interact with it, and they won't grow it. So the best way to get somebody to the place of really loving their website is to have them be part of the process and have that conversation.
Hear, hear. The Peanut Gallery says yes.
For once, the Peanut Gallery is on our side.
Those peanut galleries are pretty dangerous.
They are. Got to generally take them with a grain of salt. So how do you really encourage these business owners that are going to that own these websites? How do you encourage them to be a part of that process? How do you encourage them to have authentic websites and have an authentic presence online?
Hang on, Gina, before you answer. I know you're going to have a really good web developer answer. Alex, I just want to say this. Typically, you tell them what you need. About halfway through the process, you demand it, because generally they don't deliver. That's from my personal experience. I'm very interested to hear how Gina wrangles content and participation out of her clients, because from my experience, getting content from your client is the number one problem. There we go. Gina.
Well, let's see. The record of content paralysis, I believe, was 2.5 years. Clients always want to know, how long will this take?
Yeah.
And it's really client driven, and the biggest hang up is always waiting for the client to deliver content. It's fascinating. And I think that's improving a little bit with using content management systems, because they really understand in more clear terms that they will be able to go in and change things at 2 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon, whenever they feel like it. And so part of the paralysis, I think, that comes about is because of needing to get it perfect. It's that thing of the masterpiece, and it just can really foul you up. But the other thing is that our clients, usually the project is extracurricular. They've got their regular jobs, and they're trying to manage this whole web project on the side, or in addition to what they're already responsible for. So it's tough. And we also do recommend at times getting in a content writer. We have people that can help, but oftentimes that's avoided by the client as well. And it's really interesting to hear you concur with that, John, because it's the single most challenging piece in web development.
Yeah, and Alex, not to sideline us and take us into these questions, but
no, it's totally fine.
It's the weirdest thing ever. You go, a client comes in and you say, all I need from you is some content. I really just need content. And really, at the baseline, it's a few pages of content. It ends up being maybe 2,000 words in total that we really need to get from the client. It is like, you'd think we're asking them to chop off their balls. I don't know. You'd think we're asking them to give up their firstborn son. It is the most. You just like. I'm going to say this, and Gina, I'm sure you're much nicer with your clients. But sometimes I just want to go, how did you get in business? How did you write the fact that you were in business? How did you fill out the business forms? Because apparently you can't even sit down and write a paragraph. It's been 6 months, right? That is the paralysis. And then the odd thing is that, and Gina, this ties in with the value of a website, which I think is very much in flux right now due to the change in the semantic web, the fact that we don't have to burden a website with SEO functionality. We can do basics because it's the engagement and the content that matters, right? And so I'm interested in hearing your feelings on that. But the truth is, business owners, they go, well, I want to pay for a website. And then we ask them for content and they complain. And we say, well, how about paying for somebody to write the content for you? And they complain. And then when they're done and they look at their website and it looks nice, but the content blows, they complain. It's like, well, you ain't got nobody to blame but yourself. So that's just going to leave that little rant at that. Do you agree with that, Gina? Or do you have better ways of getting it out of your clients?
Depends on my mood, and it depends on my patience level with a particular client. What I tend to do is offer my assistance, and with the smaller websites, solopreneurs, really teeny tiny companies, those clients tend to really appreciate my hands-on involvement with their content. So I do a lot of editing and a lot of suggesting, and I play with the content with them, and that kind of loosens people up and gets them thinking a little more comfortably about what it is they need to produce. Nice. Now, websites that are much bigger, which we often also do, I don't do that. And we did, a number of years ago, put a clause in our contract about client-caused delays because it was just getting so crazy. Re-engaging in a project after you put it aside for several months because you're waiting for content can get really challenging. And when you create the budget starting out, you haven't really planned for that delay that they cause and the re-engagement. So we've built some protections into our contract.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, that definitely is helpful, and usually we don't end up charging the fees that we have in there that they agreed to pay, but when there have been times when we have, and it goes quite nicely because they know they agreed to that in the beginning, so it helps.
We did the same. I just have to say we did exactly the same. We wrote provisions into our contract to say after a certain amount of time, if you haven't delivered your content, we're mothballing the project, and we're going to charge you a fee to take it out of mothball. In the end, it costs us money, it costs us time, resources. I never charge the client because I feel like a jerk for doing it. It's kind of like a threat to get them to cough up what we need, right? So it's
they take that seriously.
Yeah, but it's really interesting that one of the critical pieces that a company needs to be online, and I know we're going to talk, Alex, about the value of a website today with social media and everything that's going on. Where does it sit? And I really think that value has shifted greatly from the website used to be the home base. I don't think it's home base anymore. I think it's an ancillary aspect that holds long-form content and proves authority. I don't think it is the end-all be-all, but business owners have a disconnect in the fact that they want these things. They don't want to pay a lot for them. But in the end, if you take your website and you want something that's going to last you for 2-3 years, maybe it gets a reface over those 2-3 years, but it's your website, it's your content. If you can't see investing, anywhere between at minimum 3 to really somewhere around $8K for your website, depending on the functionality you need, you don't understand what being in business is. And I'm really shocked at that disconnect between what they think they should pay for something that is their proof of authority on the web, right? It's less than a car, yet it's so critical to a business. And do you experience that disconnect with business owners and understanding the value of of how important the website is, and how reluctant they are to see it completed as a quality marker of their authority? Do you find that incongruency?
Sure, absolutely. And some of those people aren't the right match for us.
Right.
We definitely want to be valued for our work and our expertise. We've been at this for it's almost 17 years now, so we've got a long track record of experience. And if a company doesn't understand the value of what we're providing for them, it's not going to be a great relationship. We're always looking for long-term relationships, and some of our clients we've been with since the beginning. And how do you prove value? It's a really tricky. It's a really interesting and a really tricky question. And it's funny because with art, there was always that question too, and the market always drove the value of art. And that's a whole other conversation. But I feel like I've been up against that value thing one way or another forever. And, you just have to value your own work. It really just comes down to where you're at with it. And some kinds of businesses still local do manage without websites. And so, it's a judgment call for each individual company, what they're looking for, what they're hoping to achieve, how they're looking for their customers, what kind of conversions they need, all that stuff. There's a lot of pieces that go into the equation. But trying to convince people, I've been kind of given up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, John would probably say the same thing.
Well.
Yeah, I think if you talk to I think it's pretty fair to say that most web developers share these sentiments.
Yeah.
It's pretty common.
And with that, Alex, we're at the bottom of the hour. I think we should go into your first question because it really kind of ties into this.
Before we do that, I have two questions. The first one is actually from Gail Pasternak, who herself is a writer. She says, when you have problems getting content from a business, do you ever recommend ghostwriters?
Sure. Gina?
I don't think that's a really interesting question. It's one that I've grappled with myself. I think because your identity is so critical and because we're really looking for authenticity, the ghostwriting thing can be kind of tricky. And if you have a really established relationship with a good writer who can help you out and kind of there can be a balance between your own voice and what they're adding, and maybe they can do some of the research or help you get over certain hurdles, yeah, I think it's an acceptable thing to do. I think whatever it takes to create content is whatever tools that you come up with are fair game, and I would always suggest having as your goal working towards a time when you can create your own content, because I think that your authenticity is what's most important, and eventually it's going to become clear that you're not you and in your work, in your writing. So, but I don't want to naysay ghostwriting at all. It's not, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. So it's a tricky balance.
So I just want to clarify something real quick, because Gail used the term ghostwriting, and we need to clarify, because I agree with you 100%. A ghostwriter usually means somebody hired to write your book for you, somebody who's not going to be known, somebody who's writing in place of you, your voice. But depending on, I mean, we can give that another label. Somebody you hired to blog for you, right? Gun for hire, like Jason Brick. His job is to understand who you are, research, investigate, get to know your business and what you're trying to say, right? And by doing this, he becomes your writer. So it's not a ghostwriter anymore. He's just a person you hire to learn about your business and produce the content, and you're just paying him for that content. I think that's a lot different.
But then does he put his name on it?
Not if he's a ghostwriter.
Right, and there's the only aspect there. If the voice, okay, if the voice is solid, the question becomes a one of price. If I'm Jason Brick and I'm writing content for whatever, a coal company, I don't know, if I add the authorship attribution to that, I'm associating myself with those words, with that content, and that keyword space. I'm not sure I'd want to be associated with it. It doesn't really do Jason Brick any good, so it becomes a question of cost. Jason could say, I want attribution for this, therefore I'm going to give myself attribution, just put me on your blog as a writer for your site. Or he could say, I don't want attribution, and the cost can be varied, right? Do I charge more or less for the attribution depending on what it's worth? And I think that's something you could work out with the business owner. Does that sound right, Gina? Or?
But if he's only, like, are you saying that he writes all of their blog posts, or the issue that I'm seeing is if he writes one blog post and then someone goes in and does other ones, the voice is just going to get all messed up, which is why I'm so protective of the SEOWiSE voice.
Now let's shift those statements. I want to clearly define the difference between engagement, which I believe needs to be handled under a clear and concise voice, versus blog posts. I don't think blog posts are going to, if you have 3-4 different people that end up producing blog posts for a company, I don't think you're going to have a voice issue. I think the voice issue comes in the real-time engagement. That needs to be consistent. So in that sense, I mean, Jason Brick was doing 22 posts a month for me on self-storage, going across properties, right? Not the kind of stuff that he needs to be associated with, not the kind of stuff that does anything for authorship, but it was putting useful keyword-rich content on these storage sites, and so I guess to me that's where the difference comes in, Alex. It's if you're engaging. I mean, Jason Brick didn't go as those storage places and engage in Google Plus, or engage in comments on those blog posts, or even share those blog posts. Produced them, put them there, left it to the owner and the voice to work the content.
Right. I guess. Gina, you can jump in.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this was a process that worked for you and it functioned well. What I would probably recommend, and this is something, again, that I haven't really pondered that deeply, but what I would recommend is if you're going to use a ghostwriter, edit the piece, add your own voice to it, change things in it, take what you've got, take that raw material that you get given, and then turn it into something that's your own, so that once it's published, it does have your voice. Because I do actually believe there should be a consistency between the voice on the blog and the engagement voice, and the voice that's here talking to you in person. If I was having people write my blog posts and then I showed up here, which is how you've gotten to know me, really. I mean, I'm obviously commenting and engaging on posts on Google Plus all the time. But the way you've really gotten to know me is through my blog posts. And if I was somebody entirely different than who wrote those posts, you'd feel it. And even if you didn't consciously grab onto that fact, there'd be some part in your body that would know that something was wrong, something wasn't quite right, and there would be a little bit of trust loss, in my opinion.
That's fair. That's fair. I think the business owner is the person who should feel that disconnect, right? But I think most business owners, when they start, don't recognize or understand the value of that engagement, of that personal connection, and don't want to have the time to do it. So then do we take that step beyond? So let's say this. Answering Gail's question, I'd have to agree with Gina based on everything that we've said. A ghostwriter is probably not the right way to go in that sense. Hiring somebody to be your voice, like Alex is for SEOWiSE, that's a different story, right?
There's transparency.
Yeah, but and you're right, that is transparency, okay? Everybody knows who she is, everybody knows she writes the blog post. But now you're getting into the difference between a blog post that's there to provide useful information and a blog post that's there to really help you get to know the company. There are lots of blog posts that are published every day that are nothing more than just information. There's no soul there, right? They're still doing their work, right? And that model still functions for a lot of companies. And I think we're seeing the end of that time. I think the move to transparency, to authenticity, is forcing exactly what you're saying, right? That it has to be consistent. It has to be the same voice. Whether you pay somebody to learn to be that voice, or you're that voice, or however you make that happen, I believe you're right. It's moving toward we're demanding the consistency, right?
Yeah, and while we're really just addressing it in terms of very small companies.
Yes.
Clearly, when a company is bigger, it gets more complex.
Absolutely. I mean, Moz is a great example.
Right. Yeah, I guess quality control, voice control. Somebody's got to be supervising. Sorry, my phones just were distracting me. Somebody's got to be supervising what's going on. And I think as long as it's a conscious decision and done really intentionally and carefully, creativity is a really big part of all of this. And if you can creatively find a solution that works for you, I'd say go for it. just be cautious and just be mindful of what you're getting into.
I'm cool with that answer. I feel like Gail got a little bit more than she bargained for with that question.
Yes, she did.
You're
How
welcome.
about a yes, no? Yes, no.
Yeah, right. Okay, one more question, and this should be a quick one before we move into the discussion. Gina, what is the one thing, and I know I hate it when people are like, the one thing, but what is the one thing that you recommend a website owner, what is the one thing that you recommend to website owners ready to have an authentic web presence?
I'm a bad one thing person.
Three?
The one thing. Well, the most important first thing is to get to understand who you are. If you want to be authentic, that requires some internal self-discovery, whether that be just about, if you're a solopreneur, it's a more personal kind of exploration. If you're a small business, it's understanding what it is that the business is doing, what are you providing, who are your clients, your customers, what's most important, what's your mission. You're just really taking a good look at what it is you're doing and what's important to you, because you can't be authentic if you don't know yourself. So getting to understand and identify what your priorities are and what you're after, what you think you're doing with your business would be the first thing to do. I don't know if that's a one thing, but it's a first thing.
It is. It's a big thing, but it's a one thing. So you fit the criteria. Okay, fantastic. Now we can move into the discussion, which John hinted at a little bit, and he has given a little bit of his opinion. But we obviously met through Google+. I wholeheartedly believe in the power of social media. So I'm curious, and this goes around Plus a lot, but do we need websites now that we have social media?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
why would, because there are some people that argue that you can have a web presence solely through, you can do your blogging through Google+.
You can.
So what sort of benefits does a website bring to a business owner?
Well, contrary to what John was saying earlier, I do still see the website as the hub, and that's your home base, it's your anchor. And you've got this thing that's your website, and everything is an offshoot from that. And you own that web property, and it's the only piece that you own. So if you're doing your blogging on Google+, we think it's going to be here forever because we're so enamored and so excited, and it's just changing our lives. But we don't actually know what's going to happen down the road. And you could potentially lose all of your work if that's where your home base is. And the other thing I feel is that it's limiting, because there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of different social media channels. If you have a website as your home base, as your hub, then you can branch out in any direction that you choose to branch out in, and you've always got your home base. Whereas if you're choosing a social media channel to do that and they kill your profile, you're homeless, right? You've got nothing. And you've lost your archives. And also with authorship, I think it's really good to have everything based in that one location as the kind of the driving force. So that's been my opinion, and it hasn't changed. There's nothing that's happened yet in my experience that has altered that. And John, I understand that you're looking sort of farther forward, and I may eat those words in a couple of years, but that's still where I'm at.
No, I think it's absolutely safe and sound to be in that place. I think most people are. I'm impatient in terms of seeing the changes. The website is still a very important aspect. I just think it's an important aspect for different reasons. I think it's there to prove authority. I think it's there for your long form content. I think it's there for the static pages that you want to have represent what you do. I don't think it's where the bulk of your effort should go anymore. I don't think your effort should be spent there. I think you should write long form content there, and it's a nice place to showcase who you are. But really, we've shifted from that kind of static, newspaper kind of thing. It's slow, it's old, it's there, to active, real time, in the moment, engaging on everybody's stuff in places like Google Plus. And I gotta be really biased and say only in places like Google Plus. I don't see this kind of engagement happening on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else. So when you put all the pieces together and you say, you mentioned authorship, right? Well, I think authorship has turned Google Plus into the new home, all right? We can all freak out and worry about losing our stuff to this web service or that web service. I don't really think anybody understands just what that would mean in terms of magnitude if a corporation like Google, who runs 90% of the web's volume in the world, I don't see that being shut down. I don't see that being changed so much, so quickly, so monumentally that it destroys my business. And so I'm putting all of my effort, most of my effort, into Google Plus and my authority and my authorship, because Google's made it very clear that that's where they want the signals happening. Google's given us very clear signals as to the value of focusing on engagement there. So yes, your websites are still important. We're going to be building websites from now, the next 5-10 years. I'm sure that's not going to be a big deal. Having them on in an owned and operated separate space, I think we're going to see that start to change because, yep, I can say I own Canvas Dreams. I own my website on the server I rent from a local company called Canvas Dreams. Doesn't make that any more secure than having it on Google. It's a false sense of security to think that because it's there, it's not going to disappear. And
well, you have your local files. I mean, you still own all of the material.
Sure. But the bulk of the material that I care about has been propagated across the web. It's been spread from Plus to LinkedIn to Facebook to Twitter to everywhere. I don't have to keep it. It's there. It's distributed. It's out. And so, yes, I have local files, but my footprint and my business's footprint is alive and out there. I don't need to worry about keeping a local copy. That local copy is stagnant, and that's just how I look at it. So yeah, I understand that that's probably a scary and risky proposition for most people, but that's I see it shifting to website becoming the secondary aspect, you the individual and your real-time activity the primary aspect, and that's just where I see it. That's all.
Actually, what you're describing is SEO as it stands right now. So really, we're actually in agreement. It's just, and what you're describing about where the vibrancy lives and that spread and the propagation of who you are and the material that you produce being wider than just on your website. That, of course, and that is the goal, and that's what I'm trying to explain to clients all the time now about what they need to be out there doing. But it's just, where do you choose your anchor to be?
Sure.
And I kind of still like websites.
I kind of do too. It's just as we got into, as Alex and I got more and more into what we were doing on Google Plus and YouTube, I said, there's too much to do here that we're going to focus our effort on this. The website, SEOWiSE website, is kind of in mothball state right now as we refigure out what to do with it. Right? And it's probably hurting us not focusing our attention there, but I think as long as we continue to focus attention in Google Plus and a catastrophe doesn't occur anytime soon, we shouldn't hurt our overall footprint, right?
Right. It's been, since I've been engaged with Google Plus, it's been an interesting challenge for me because I was writing some posts on Google Plus that I was not feeling were appropriate for my blog, and so I went through this challenging transition of trying to find the way to merge the two as much as possible so that I could be enjoying the kind of communication I really enjoy both on my business blog and in Google Plus. And Google Plus affords me a lot more freedom and a lot more creativity, and it's a place where I know there will be response to what I'm saying, and that's super exciting for me. So it took me a really long time to figure out something incredibly simple. It was the simplest solution I could have imagined, and it just took, I'm just a little slow sometimes. I just made a part of my blog be sort of dedicated to the spirit of Google Plus, so that I'd have a place to write on the blog that wasn't just the standard business stuff. Here are 5 social media tools. And,
yeah.
Because I need to have that stuff too for our clients, and that stuff's really important. But my heart is with the storytelling and the sort of deeper concepts.
Nice point.
And,
nice point there.
Sharing.
That you just brought up a really good distinction between content that's meant to just be kind of for my clients, 5 social media tips, and the deeper stuff that you want to explore through Plus. That's.
Yeah, and no offense to the people that are writing those articles, because I really appreciate those articles for myself too. I mean, those how-tos and the helping kinds of articles they have a really important place. So I don't mean to diminish that in any way. It's just different.
Right. Yeah.
It is. I think it also shows a little bit less. It reveals less of the writer generally, in my opinion. When I go through a lot of those how-tos. I mean, I went through like 39 blogging tips from pros today, and those I tend to skim through because I'm like, okay, tips, cool, got it, awesome. But posts like your posts that talk about storytelling and holistic SEO, I actually read those because I feel like I get a sense of you, as well as the significance of storytelling that you're trying to explain. So while both do serve their purposes really well, there's one that I think is more it's more important to the identity of the author than the other. So maybe that's where ghostwriting can come in. The ghostwriters can write the how-tos because they're not as revelatory as.
Thank you for saying that. I'm trying to make those pieces compelling because I feel compelled to write what I'm writing, and so I think that comes across. And for me, it's this huge thrill to have a vehicle for doing that, and to know that people are actually going to read it and say something. It's like it's pretty fun.
I got to say that, Alex, you summarized what I was trying to clarify earlier, is that I think ghostwriters have a place. It's just not in writing the deep stuff, And do you want to? We're at 152. Do you want to hit the other question?
Yes. We'll go into the last question. It shouldn't take that long. So Gideon Rosenblatt says that organizations might be viewed as living organisms. And Gina, you said something rather similar about websites. In your article, there is no them. You said a website doesn't function in isolation, nor should you in relation to your website. It needs connection and relationship with other entities, people, and things to succeed. So my big question is this true? Can we consider our websites to be alive in a sense?
I've been using that little word for websites for a lot of years, and it seems to be a word that helps key people into the idea that I'm trying to get across. And if we describe it as a relationship between you and this object, which is the website, somehow that seems to click for people more. And so that's why I kind of came up with that at a certain point, and I do think that it's true. I think that just because something is an organization or a business or some kind of a structure, that doesn't make it not alive. I don't know, it's almost a funny word to even talk about. But yeah, I mean, there's a flow between us and the things that we create. And what I've found is that I affect the website as I'm making it or as I'm interacting with it, but it also affects me back. So it's a two-way street, and one of the things that we found in our work with a lot of nonprofits especially, but businesses too, that what people who are really open can find is that if their once their website is launched and they're living with it and using it as a tool, it starts to inform them about who they are. It's like this really interesting kind of alchemy that can occur between the website and the owner of the website if they're open to it. And sometimes it even changes businesses and changes organizations and how they're running things. And I mean, some of that can be not mystical at all, just basically like, oh, the website's making it so I don't have to answer these questions on the phone every day because that information is on the website, and the website's informing me about how I can better use my time. So there, that's a really basic sort of banal example, but that can get grander too if you're open to it.
Right. John, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
No, this is your... No, I was going to try to stay out of this one and let you go run on it. In that sense, Gina, I think... So yes, that's one way to look at the living, breathing. I want to go in a really even, I think, more base level and say, we didn't used to have a connection between our websites and our social media entities, right? It was just the website, and you posted comments, and if somebody engaged, that was great. Now we have the ability to see this real-time interaction, right? We can, that was interesting, wireless caller on my phone. We can, with Google Plus, integrate the comments, right? And I know we can integrate comments with other things, Facebook and all the other general social media things. But now the conversation is living and breathing. The website is living and breathing because we've got real-time action happening there. It's the website becomes an extension of the social space, and the social space becomes an extension of the website. They're kind of melded. So I think, I know that doesn't quite go in the same direction, but I see living and breathing in that aspect.
Sure it does. I think that's a great point. It all adds up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's we have a conversation that can be continued endlessly through whatever medium we want, and it branches off and spreads in however many directions, and that's just like an organism, right? I mean, yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah, I love the word conversation. That's a good one in there too.
Yeah, because really that's, it's funny. We're doing broadcasting, but it's conversation casting. It's, we were trying to find a new word for it, and I can't find a word that works. But it's not a broadcast, and your website used to be a broadcast with limited response. Now it can be a combo cast, a camoogling. Well, let's pick one of those words that everybody's been making up to express what this means. A giant conversation that can happen with everybody around the world whenever you want across pretty much any medium. That's what we've got, right?
Right. Well, and this is, as someone in communication, this is what we're just starting to scrape the surface of, because we're just starting to really recognize it in online communication. We used to focus so much on this idea of broadcasting, what we call one-way communication. We saw it a lot as they call it the hypodermic needle effect, where it's like injecting everybody with the same message. And then we saw two-way communication with phones. You can talk through a mediated form on a phone. But the interesting thing about social media is that it is interpersonal communication at a mass communication level. And we still don't really understand what that means. We're still really, really confused about how is that changing communication. And we've focused so much on our effects on this particular medium, we've yet to really look at the effects that the medium is having on us, which is why, Gina, when you mentioned that it can actually, the website can change the business, that I just find absolutely fascinating, because I think it's true. I think our conversations and our even this inanimate object, technically, that we create, our creations, in effect, end up having an effect on ourselves. and it's this loop of us creating, and then that creation comes back and has an effect on us, which someone looked at. Her name is Sherry Turkle. She looked at artificial intelligence and how we created this artificial intelligence, but now we're using it to define ourselves. Not to get super philosophical or anything, but I also agree that I do think that websites are living organisms.
I just got everybody, there's a big pause of silence. Alex, that was phenomenal. You said several things in there that I really want to grab and quote. And it's unfortunate that we don't have Todd. We miss you, Todd, because you usually do all this extra work and grab the comments and wow.
Yeah, where's Todd?
He's
in Seattle, isn't he?
Yeah, he's either on a plane or getting on a plane, or he's all busy today. He wasn't able to join us. I wish he had. Todd's kind of like he handles yet another aspect, right? It's why everybody needs a team. He deals with everything going on the conversation side. So, wow, that was just yeah.
That was really fast.
Yeah, you said this shouldn't take long. We should have started with this one, Alex. Should have started with this question.
Well, it was just I just got to throw in oh, by the way, communication connection. Everything's about communication. I'm going to make everybody believe that by the time I'm done with my graduate degree.
Yeah.
Well, we
Well, I'm really glad you got to talk a little bit, because I was on the verge of asking you, because I know that's your passion, and it really fits in this conversation because it's all a dialogue when you're talking about websites and all that stuff.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Do you want to carry this anymore, Alex, or do you want to actually try to end in some reasonable form of time?
We're gonna try to end at a reasonable time. I don't know what. Gina, where are you?
Where am I located?
Yeah.
I'm in Santa Barbara, California.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so it's still relatively early. It's what, 2:00 for both of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2:00.
So it's still relatively early. Well, Gina's a busy woman, which is part of the reason that we did the Thursday edition.
I really appreciate that.
No, this is great.
Oh,
What?
We appreciate you coming on.
Oh, this has been, awesome. I want to have you on again. I think we'll do a segment just talking web development. We'll just...
I'd love that. This was a lot of fun. You guys are really comfortable and easy to talk to, and you've made me very, you've put me at ease. It's great.
Oh,
Thanks.
good. I'm glad. This was one of the times where stuff worked. You don't hear me cussing a lot. Alice can tell you there are other...
Well, that was happening like a half hour before the show, and then he let go.
That's the green room experience.
Which is that's better than usual. I mean, usually it's like 5 minutes before the show. So, getting better.
Whatever can go wrong will go wrong, right?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. This has been just awesome. For everybody out there that's been paying attention, this has been Office Hours. It's the Friday edition being done on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever. Geez, I can't even keep days straight, Alex. Next week, we have a bunch of things going on. We will have the Wednesday show. We will have Thursday Glass in the Class with Larry, right? We got Larry Fenelier? Okay. Larry Fenelier, Food Stories. Larry Fenelier, Caribbean Chef. Yeah, it's Larry. We're going to have Larry on. I can't wait for that. He's awesome. I'm going to bring him in Glass in the Class, and that's at the ridiculous hour of 6:20 a.m. for Pacific, right, Alex?
Yes,
Okay.
It is.
So stupid early in the morning for those of us on the West Coast, normal time for everybody on the East Coast. That'll be Thursday, Glass in the Class with Larry Fenelier. Friday will be a Office Hours interview edition with Paul Gerald. Paul Gerald is the author of 60 Hikes Within 60 Miles in Portland and Portland Breakfast book. He's an awesome guy, one of the original WISE writers, and I'm looking forward to talking with Paul. Gina Fidel, our guest for today. Let's pull up this beautiful shot with Alex and Gina. Much better to look at than my face.
I can't see
I know
that.
you can't. This is part of what makes broadcasting fun. I'd like to thank Gina and Alex for doing the show today. We will probably have Gina back. I know we'll have Gina back to talk web development because her and I have so many things to discuss. Alex, thank you for hosting. To everybody out there, I'd like to say this has been Office Hours, and really appreciate you watching. And if you're interested in learning more, knowing more, join our community, the SEOWiSE community. Find us on YouTube and subscribe, because most everything we do outside of Alex's beautiful blog post happens on YouTube. We are about video broadcasting, live stream broadcasting. I'm John. This is SEOWiSE Office Hours, and we will see you guys next Wednesday. You all have a good weekend. Thank you.